Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is person, woman, man, camera, pig. And of course, I was doing a little play on the president's favorite test to refer to about his cognitive well-being. But also just all of the conversation this week about what happened on Air Force One with Catherine Lucy, the Bloomberg journalist who was asking him questions about the Epstein files. Rufus is in here, so my rescue dog. So you're probably going to hear some dog noises in the background. He just came running over when he heard his noise. Yeah, his name rather. Yes, you. So, I'm sure you have all heard by now, but, she's asking him questions, which is what journalists are supposed to do, right? That is the job of a journalist, is to be asking questions about stories that are happening in our country in order to keep our officials accountable, especially the President of the United States. And the Epstein files, this just goes on and on and on. And the survivors, they have done everything possible to try to get some small measure of respect, justice, and it keeps getting delayed, denied, and on we go. So it is correct for journalists to be questioning the president, who could release these files right now if he wanted to. He does not have to wait. And that is all that she did. And his response was quiet, Piggy, waving his finger in her face. And it was the same. You probably, a lot of people had a very strong reaction to it, which may have surprised people. I don't know. It didn't surprise me. I had a very strong reaction to it. Even though this president does things like this all the time. And in fact, in the same week, Mary Kay Bruce, who is the ABC News White House correspondent, was in the Oval Office when the president invited MBS, the man who his Justice Department at the time, the last go around, said was responsible for the death and dismemberment. This is a person who has been a pariah on the world stage, and now he's suddenly being invited to the White House with a state dinner and a flyover and horses and flags up. And she had the temerity to also be questioning the president about what is this person doing here? Why is he here when we know he is responsible for the death of a Washington Post journalist? What is happening? Jamal Khashoggi, this is a known thing, and 9/11 families are horrified. What is happening here? And instead of, answering those questions in a reasonable way, he attacked her personally. So, for people like me, that's what I was writing about this week, is the misogyny that is rampant with this particular man, this administration, and it all trickles down. And I think for people like me who feel the way that I do, I thought when the tapes came out, the grab him by the pussy tapes, I thought for sure his presidential, I just thought that was over. And when he won anyway, I I think my sense of personal heartbreak and betrayal, I just felt so devastated that there are enough people in this country who just don't care when a man says something like that. When a man says, I grab him by the pussy, that, I don't, it's like they, like I just was really so devastated that that's not disqualifying. That everything that's happened since, I'm just like, how many women does it take, before people are like, okay, that's enough? How many Epstein survivors have to come forward? This president just got Ghislaine Maxwell this sweetheart deal, this cushy deal where she was moved, where she's behind bars, where she should be. She hurt children. She's a convicted pedophile, sex offender, perjurer. She helped the worst pedophile we've had in known history here in this country. And he moved her to a prison camp. And people still support this man. So I decided this week, and I'm going to talk about things. I'm not going to talk about assault. So I'll just say that up front. I'm not going to talk about assault. I wanted to write about the experience of being a girl and a woman, growing up in this society, growing up in this culture, growing up in this country. But it's not just here. I want you to understand I've been writing about this stuff for years, and every time I write about it, I hear from women all over the world, and what I hear is, me too, me too. And I don't think it's getting through yet fully. I don't know. The women who are supporting men like this, I think the level of internalized misogyny is so deep, and it's heartbreaking. It really is. It breaks my heart when I see women supporting a man who treats women this way with no respect. No respect. I really wonder what is going on with you, that you're still going to support someone like this. I don't get it. And I started writing about, the first, I went backward in time. I started when I was 25. And I could have started almost anywhere, really, but I started when I was 25. I was in this relationship, and I grew up, I didn't have the easiest time. I've written about it and I've talked about it. But my dad was, I think both of my parents were complicated people. I think most people are complicated. I don't think most people you can paint with one brush or another. Both of my parents had incredible qualities as human beings. And then they had qualities that I think made it very hard for them to be great parents at the time that they had me. And that is also part of parenting, is like when your children show up on your timeline. My mother was 24 when she had me, and, my dad was 45. So, and my mother had a lot of trauma in her background. She lost her dad when she was 13. She lost her mom when she was 28. My dad left the following week. She had a lot of loss in her life, very sudden. So I have my heart, like, I have a lot of compassion for my mother. and the older I have gotten, and the more I've been through as a woman, kind of the more my compassion for my mother has grown, and the less my compassion for my dad. You know, when I was a kid, I thought my dad hung the moon. When I was a little girl, I really thought he was just like the bee's knees, and he just, I mean, cheated on every woman he was ever with, but like as if it was an Olympic sport. It was, you know, it was really something else. And he used to take me on dates with him after school when I was tiny, like after he and my mom split, which happened when I was 4. He would like pick me up from my mom's, or he would pick me up from school, and we would go to some lady friend's house, and he would put me in front of the TV, and he would go bang her in the other room, and then we would go home to my stepmom, who would have dinner on the table, and she would say, "What did you do?" And he would say, "Oh, we went to the playground, or we went to the museum, or and I would be quiet because he would have told me on the way home, if we say where we were, it will hurt her feelings. She won't understand. I didn't do anything wrong. You know, I was just rehearsing." He was an actor. Those noises were just us rehearsing, whatever. And I was 4, 5, 6, so I believed him. And when women would call the house, my stepmom would go into the bathroom and she would sob all night. So I knew that what he was saying was true, that her feelings would be hurt. So I would be quiet. I was, I was secret keeping for him. He would say things to me like, "You're an old soul, you came into the world that way. You're so mature for your age." I can't tell you how many men said things like that to me when I was a kid. "You're such an old soul, you're so mature for your age. You say things that, girls your age, I would never think they would say things like, you're so smart, you're so advanced." Men say things like that to little girls to make it okay when they don't treat them as children. It's a way of excusing their pathology, their feelings of, I'm looking at this child, but I'm not looking at her as a child, and I don't want to feel weird about that, so I'm going to make it that she's an old soul or she's mature for her age. It's her, it's not me. No, it's you. It's you. So I had a lot of that, and I could have written so many different things, but I picked 3 sort of stories that I hope will illustrate this for people who might not understand, maybe men who don't understand what it's like. And maybe for some women who have a hard time putting words to this stuff. So I started with this experience I had when I was 25. I was dating this man. When you come out of a chaotic childhood, and there were other things. There was alcoholism, there was violence, there was a lot of stuff. It's pretty likely that you're going to play some of that stuff out in your relationships until you figure things out, which I certainly did. And so I was in this relationship with this man when I was 25, and I had been with him for about a year, and it had been getting increasingly scary. He was very controlling. He was older. He was 20 years older than I was. And he was just very controlling, really wanted to know where I was, like every minute of the day. If he called and he couldn't find me, he would call 40 times. It was just getting to this place where I was really concerned for my physical safety. He was becoming violent. The only place, as time was passing, the only place it could go next was for him to actually hit me. That had not happened yet, but he was throwing things. It was getting to that place. He had hit the wall next to my head with his fist. It just was not things were not going well, and I knew I needed to remove myself from the situation. But I also knew he was not going to allow me to do that. I needed to find a way out. So one night I waited until he was asleep, and my dog was there in the room with me. Speaking of dogs, he's just, my dog, Rufus, is not being terrific today, but that's okay. He's a puppy. So I waited until he was asleep. I wrote that I had sex with him and I felt nothing except for my desire to not die. And I know so many women who have been in that situation where they are doing things they don't want to do in order to stay safe. I waited until he was asleep. I waited to hear his breath deepen and even out. I just was there in the bed with my heart pounding, waiting until it felt safe to leave. And for months, I had been, every time I left the house, taking things of mine with me. I'd been planning for this, and I had had so many conversations with my close girlfriends, I countless tears. I mean, just all leading up to this final night. And so I had the dog was asleep in the room with me. I waited until I felt like, okay, he's deeply asleep. His breath is deep and even, and it's been like that for 2 hours now. I'm gonna do this. And so I, slid out of bed. I really thought he's gonna wake up from the sound of my heart slamming against my chest, or I'm gonna have a heart attack and just die here on the floor. I crawled over to my dog. I knew I had to get his collar off because he had tags that jingled. So, my hands were shaking. I took the collar off. I held the tags in my other hand so they wouldn't make any noise. And I grabbed my dog by the scruff of his neck. He was a great dog. And kind of tried to, in my brain, get across to him what we were doing. We're sneaking out of here. Please understand. Telepathically, be with me on this, which he was. And so, we got out of the bedroom, went to the front of the house. I had my shoulder bag there. I had a couple more things I shoved into my bag that were mine, slipped my boots on. This is winter in New York City. And right as I'm doing that, and I'm trying to get my dog stuff, everything out the front door, I hear him call me, and I called back and hoped it was going to sound like I was in the bathroom and not like I was in the front of the house. I said, I'll be right back or whatever. And I slipped out the front door with the dog, and I went sort of walking down the hallway of this high-rise building and to the elevator banks. And I was pushing on the button the way that you do, where you're just pushing on the button, as if that's somehow going to make the elevator arrive more quickly. And I heard the front door open, and he bellowed down the hallway, Allie, what the fuck are you doing? And get back here. And I said, I yelled back, leave me alone. And one of the doors opened in the hallway, and it was this older woman that I had spoken to one day in the elevator. She liked my dog. My dog liked her. She was very kind. And she looked at him. He's running down the hallway in his underwear at 3:00 in the morning, and looked at me, and she knew. And he said to her, what the fuck are you looking at? And she said to me, I'm calling the police. And I nodded, and she slammed the door and bolted it. The elevator doors opened. I got in with my dog. He comes, gets to the elevator. I knew he wasn't going to get in because he was just in his underwear, and he was a doctor, and he did care about what people thought. And I knew that no matter how enraged he was not going to allow the elevator doors to open in the lobby in his underwear, just in case somebody was coming in, or, there were doormen down there. Like, I just knew that he wasn't going to allow himself to be seen that way. And I was right. As the elevator doors were closed, he looked stunned. I think he was shocked that I was actually leaving, that I had figured out how to leave, and that anybody would leave him, would have the audacity to leave him. And he said to me, I'm sorry I'm dropping lots of F-bombs today, but I'm telling you kind of verbatim what happened. Well, fuck you then. You're just a replaceable hole. And that's the last thing he said to me as the elevator doors closed. And that was it. That was it. That was the last thing that he said to me. The experience of fearing for your physical safety because someone else is bigger than you and stronger than you, and that they are capable of violence and willing to be violent, is hard to explain if you haven't been through it. There are people who experience that as children and know what that feels like. It's like a grown-up coming at them. There are people who've been through it as grown-ups with other grown-ups. It is just it's a terrible feeling, to feel that your physical safety is in jeopardy because of another person who could be that violent. And especially someone that you trusted at some point, that you had feelings for at some point. It is devastating. Someone who has apologized to you countless times and said it won't happen again, and then it does. You get to the point where you are, it's very painful. So that happened. Then I wrote about something that happened when I was 16 in my high school. I had a crush on a teacher, and I want to talk about this because there was all this conversation with the Epstein files, and I keep seeing this, and I've been seeing this from the beginning. People saying things like, well, I mean, what about the age of consent, and how old do you have to be before, these girls were being paid, and like, where were their parents? And a 16-year-old knows enough to make decisions. A 15-year-old knows enough. A 14-year-old, so we're going to have that conversation today. So when I was 16, I was in high school, and I had a crush on this teacher who started working at the school. He was not my teacher, but he started working at the school. And we took the same bus. We took the same public bus across town together. So I'd gotten to know him. And he was 24. So he was not that much older. And very nice guy. And I had a huge crush on him. But it was mutual. And it felt mutual. And he said things to me to make it clear that it was mutual. And so, months went by where we were having conversations, and he said things to me like, wow, you say things that when we started talking, I was 15. I turned 16. And of course I did, because I had not had a normal childhood. I had a dad who used to talk to me about his very grown-up problems. I had been having grown-up conversations with men my whole life. So yeah, I probably said a lot of things that you wouldn't expect to hear from a 15-year-old, or, I had not been allowed to have a normal childhood where I wasn't having conversations like that. Anyway, I was also a really romantic, heart on my sleeve, stars in my eyes, kind of girl. I really believed in happy endings and all that stuff. And I thought this guy was it. I thought we were going to ride off into the sunset together. So at a certain point, he was saying things to me like, this went on for months. I'm kind of giving you the abridged version, but it went on there was a lot of conversations after school. Nothing physical happened. There was a point in time where it got really, he almost kissed me one day, but he didn't. And he said to me, this cannot happen. I can't, my life will be ruined. And I was like, absolutely, yes, no, that's not going to happen. It was understood. That was a line that was not going to get crossed. But he was saying things to me like there was a chickenpox outbreak in our school and he stayed home. And when he came back, he was like, I stayed home because I didn't have the chickenpox when I was a kid. And if you get the chickenpox as an adult, it can make you sterile. And I'm assuming I would like to have kids. I'm assuming, that's something we're going to want to do one day. This is the kind of thing this man was saying to me. So I wasn't just making it up out of stardust and whatever. I really thought, great. I then decided I'm going to skip my senior year of high school. It was not the only reason. I was having it was very painful. My mom was drinking. I mean, that was not a new thing. It was a constant thing, but I was old enough to just be feeling so much fury because I could see clearly she was an alcoholic and no one around her. She would not admit it. No one around her would admit it. And I just had lost the gaslighting around that was so enraging and heartbreaking because I knew she needed help. And also because she was horrible to me when she drank and because I loved her so much, and I really wanted her to get help. I wanted us to have a chance, I just wanted things to be better, and no one was going to help me in that endeavor. And it was getting increasingly difficult to deal with that. And at my dad's, when I was 13, I had said I didn't want to go there anymore because I couldn't deal with listening to his stuff about women anymore. And his response to that was like, well, we're going to therapy then, and we did, which was good. But then he ruined that later, which I'm writing about that in the memoir. It's an unbelievable story. When I tell you it's an unbelievable story, it is an unbelievable story. But what had happened is the therapist said to him, stop talking to her about your problems. She's not your wife. She's not your therapist. Stop. She's 13. She's had it. She doesn't want to hear that anymore. And what had happened is he just didn't talk to me about anything anymore. He didn't know what to talk to me about if we weren't going to talk about him and his problems. It didn't occur to him to ask me about my own life or how I was or what was interesting to me. He had nothing, he had no subjects to discuss with me. And so when I would go to my dad's, and my stepmom, all she knew was I didn't want to go there anymore. And he couldn't say to her, she doesn't want to come here anymore because she's sick to death of listening to me unload about all the other women in my life. She didn't know he was doing that. And so all she thought is she doesn't want to come here anymore. She was deeply hurt. So I would go over there and it was just really painful. Nobody was really talking to me. But yet I had to go. There was this insistence of he wanted his time, but for what? So I would just basically go over there. It was just very uncomfortable and painful. And I couldn't I wanted to say to my stepmom, like, I love you, you know, like, I love you and I'm sorry. It's not you, it's him, but I couldn't. So it was just brutal. I just wanted out. I wanted out, and I thought I was in love with this guy and I wanted to marry him. That's really what I thought. And so I was accelerating all of my classes in order to skip my senior year of high school and go to Columbia. That was what I decided I was going to do, because that way I'd still be in New York City. I'd be close to my brother, be able to like keep an eye on him, because I was very worried about him and had always sort of like tried to be his protector and take care of him. And, you know, he's 11 years younger. So I had been more like maternal than, you know, like sibling. So all of that. So here I am, right, as a 16-year-old girl, and this 24-year-old man, first-year teacher, is saying things to me, and I'm like, I'm going to alter the course of my life now. I'm going to skip my senior year of high school, leave my family a year early, leave all my friends in high school a year early, go to college where I don't know anyone, even though it's just 30 blocks basically, you know, north of where I live. But like, that's a huge thing for a kid to do based on things a man is saying to her. And, you know, it's toying with a girl. You're in a position of power. It doesn't matter that it's your first year, because I saw some people who were trying to litigate the age of some of these Epstein survivors, you know? And I saw people like Megyn Kelly saying, well, you know, I mean, Epstein didn't go after 5-year-olds. It was like, he liked the barely legal types. That's what he liked, you know, like the 15 could maybe pass for legal. That woman has a daughter, from what I understand, who's like 14 or 15. That is, I don't even know how you get those words out of your mouth. I have a 16-year-old daughter. I felt physically ill when I saw that. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw that. So all of these people trying to say, you know, oh, like 15, 16, you don't know. You're a child. You don't know. You are completely, you've got, you know, you have no chance against a grown-up. And in my case, I'm talking about a guy who wasn't, you know, I don't think he was a bad person at all. I just think he abused the power that he had. Knowingly or unknowingly doesn't really matter to me. You're 24. You're going to start teaching at a high school with children. That school started in 7th grade with 13-year-olds. If you don't know that you shouldn't be having inappropriate conversations with the children in the school, you should not be teaching. You should not be in that environment. If you can't control yourself, then that's not the right job for you. My son right now is 19. He's 19 years old, and he would never talk to a 16-year-old girl. Ever. He has a 16-year-old sister he adores and protects. In a million years, he would not. He has a girlfriend that he adores. But my point is, not in a million years would my 19-year-old son be talking to a 16-year-old, because those are two different things. Your brain, where your head is at when you're 19, is different than it is when you're 16. It is disgusting for people to try to say a 16-year-old has a clue, has a chance, has a prayer in hell if an adult male is coming after her or him. You have no shot. You have no shot. Okay. What ends up happening is I go to my actual history teacher, who's a 35-year-old married man. Maybe he was a little older than that. Roughly 35. And I say, look, I'm trying to skip my senior year. I'm going to need to take advanced placement exams at the end of 11th grade. in order to be able to graduate early. Might have been at the end of 10th grade. I'm getting confused now. I think it was at the end of 10th grade. Whatever it was, I graduated at the end of 11th grade. So I think that must be right. I think I took everything at the end of 10th grade and sent my applications in at the beginning of 11th grade, and acceptances came in the spring. That's right. So I went to him and I said, like, this is what I'm trying to do. And he said, I'll help you. I'll help you get ready. Because I had to learn the second year of American history on my own in order to be able to take that test. So I started meeting with him in the library after school. He had some libraries in the area that he liked. I met him at some of those a couple of times. And he was giving me, like, stuff to read. I had the textbook for the following year and all that. One day, I'm meeting with him after school, and he's a pretty nerdy kind of guy. I thought he was a safe adult, and at that time, at 16, I did understand there are safe men and not safe men. I knew that. And I thought he was a trusted adult, someone I could trust. We're sitting there at the table at the library, and he says to me in the course of preparing for this test, he says to me, I feel really sure if we had met in college, we definitely would have dated. I'm completely like, what? First of all, what are you smoking? Because when you were 18, I don't even know if I was born yet. If I was born, I was like 1. So there's no scenario where we were meeting in college. And secondly, like, there's not an iota of interest for me. Zero, nothing. And what is happening right now? Like, I thought you were going to help me with this test. But I didn't say those things because I was shocked. I was a kid. I didn't want to hurt his feelings and tell him, I'm not interested in you. I don't remember exactly what I said to him. I think I said something like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not feeling that way. Like, I really just wanted, help with this. I know I shut it down, but I think I was really caught off guard. And, I had all those feelings going on at once, just being ill prepared for that turn in the conversation, really hurt, really felt betrayed and angry. And then also this other feeling of like, I don't want to hurt his feelings. All that stuff, but also just shock, like, what? And that was the last time I met him to get help with this test. I was just like, well, clearly I'm not going to meet with him again. And then he lost his mind. He was asking me, he'd come be like, do you want to meet? I was like, no, I'm fine. I've got it. Thank you. Like, I'm good. But I'm in this man's class. So, now I'm like having to deal with this thing that he said and know that this energy's out there. And I was also in the Model UN, and we would go away some weekends to other schools, like, in other areas away, like in the suburbs. We'd go to like Long Island, or we'd go to Westchester, whatever. And we would spend the weekend, and he would chaperone those trips. And the next trip we had, which meant, there'd be a bus, and he'd be on the bus, and then you'd be either at a hotel, motel type thing, or you would stay with a family at the school. Just depended on the school and the situation. That next trip was incredibly awkward. He kept trying to talk to me. He was following me around like a puppy, to the point that my friends noticed. My friends on the trip noticed. We're like, what is going on? And I'm like, I don't know. I just tried to like blow it off because I did not want him to lose his job over this. And not long after that, he called my mother's house. I happened to be home alone. It was after school. I answered, and he said, I can't stop thinking about you. You know, it was completely outrageous. And I said to him, this is not mutual. I do not have these feelings for you. I have never had these feelings for you. Do not call me again. And I hung up on him. I was furious. I was also thinking to myself, if my mother had been home, if she had answered, like, he would be dead. He did not understand. You know, my mother was someone, she could treat me terribly, but nobody else could. Like, she, you know, if you tried to do something, you did not want to do that. She could get drunk and come after me, and it could be terrible, but no one else could do that. So I just was like, he has no idea what he is doing. He is taking his life into his hands doing this stuff. I don't know what is going on. And maybe like a week or two after that, a letter arrived at the house, a love letter, like a long, completely insane love letter from this guy. And I just happened to get the mail that day. And I read this. I could not believe, you know, that he lost his mind. So I ripped it up into a million pieces. I was so furious. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my best. I didn't tell anybody because I thought this is the kind of thing that spreads like wildfire. He will get fired. And not only will he get fired, like, he'll get divorced. Like, there's no way this doesn't get back to his wife. You know, like, he has lost his mind. So the next day I waited, after school till everyone had cleared out, and I went over to him, and I was, you know, I was not a confrontational kid. I'm still not confrontational. I'm not confrontational by nature. You know, I've gotten to the point, and I don't know if it's age or perimenopause or, you know what, I mean, with my kids, from the moment I've had kids, if anybody did anything, you know, then forget it. It's on. That mama bear thing, just bam. I'm, you know, don't mess with my kids. But other than that, I'm not confrontational. I don't, you know, I'd rather like pause and think about, you know, extend the benefit of the doubt to people. You know, just try to communicate in a calm manner, or like not give it energy of somebody. Like, yeah. Okay. I go to him and I'm like, listen, I got your letter. You need to understand, like, do not ever contact me again this way. Don't write to me. Do not call the house. If my mother had opened that letter, she would have called the principal. You would be fired. And I don't know, what would you tell your wife about why you were fired? You know, you probably end up fired and divorced over a 16-year-old who came to you for help with a test. You need to stop. Like, you need to get it together. Leave me alone. So I think I got through to him. He left me alone after that. But that's what I was dealing with, okay? Those two scenarios going on. I don't know, maybe like 2-3 weeks after that, I'm in the hallway and going down the landing, and the head of the history department, who everybody was scared of, he only taught seniors, and he was sort of like kind of a legend in the school. He would wear like these tweed jackets with like patches on the elbows, and he smoked a pipe, and he had a beard. You know, you would have thought he was like a caricature. It's like he thought he was leading the history department at Harvard University, instead of some tiny private school, you know, in New York City. He barks my name out on the landing and says, you know, I need to speak to you. You know, and it was very much like, you're in trouble. I couldn't imagine why he wanted to talk. Like, I didn't have him for a class. I'd never spoken to him. I'd never been in his office, and I'd never been in trouble. I was like straight A, like not a kid who got in trouble. So I said, I was with friends. I was like, I'll catch up with you. Everybody was looking at me like, what? I was like, I have no idea. I go over to his office, which turns out to be like a long, thin, had to be a converted closet. I had to press my body up against him to get by, which he did not. He knew, like, he could have stepped out to let me get in, and he didn't. I go in, and he gestures for me to sit down and closes the door, and he smokes a pipe and the same tobacco my dad smoked. So the whole place is tiny. It's a small office. It's like a wall of pipe smoke, sweet, oppressive. I just wanted to flee. I felt like every cell in my body was like, run, I just had a terrible feeling of being like a trapped animal. That's how I felt. But you're a kid, you got to do what the grown-ups tell you to do. I sit down, and he leans back. He's like sitting in his chair. He's got his pipe, and he's like, he says to me, do you know why you're here? And I said, I have no idea. And he just looks at me in that way that men look at you. He like looked at me for a very long time, like in that squinty way. He's like smoking his pipe when they're imagining what you look like without clothes on, and make it really obvious like that. And he waited so long. I could feel myself like completely flushed and sweating. Like I broke out in a sweat. I was so uncomfortable. And then he said to me, I know you have a crush on my new hire. It's his first year. You're making it really difficult for him. Actually, he opened with, you're wreaking havoc in my department. That's what it was. You're wreaking havoc in my department. I know you have a crush on my new hire. It's his first year. You're making it really difficult for him. So I was just like totally stunned, because I thought, well, there's no way he could know that I had a crush unless this history teacher had said something to him. And I couldn't for the life of me imagine why he would do that when he wasn't innocent. He had been saying outrageous things to me, mutual things to me. So I just couldn't imagine. The best I could think was maybe the head of the history department had caught wind and confronted him. And in a panic, he had said, oh, she has a crush on me or something. That was the best I could sort of like figure in the moment had happened. But whatever had happened, it was I felt angry and embarrassed and uncomfortable that he hadn't given me a heads up and that I was in this position, but I didn't want him to get in trouble. I didn't want him to get fired, so I instantly went into like protect him mode. And I said, okay, like I understand and I'll be more aware of myself. And I really hoped like he would then excuse me. But then he started talking to me about my actual history teacher. He said, well, what is going on with so-and-so? And I was like, oh my God. I'm being blamed for that? Like, that man has like lost his mind, like that has nothing to do with me. I did nothing. And I just was having all of these thoughts inside. Like, I am being blamed for wreaking havoc in this man's department. I'm being blamed. Me, the 16-year-old girl, not the men who work for him, not the grown-ass men who work for him. I'm the one being blamed. Like, it's me. It's my fault. It's something I'm doing that's wreaking this havoc. I'm ruining the workplace. You know how long this shit has been going on? Men like this bullshit, where women and girls are getting blamed for crap that men are doing forever. And I, of course, at 16, did not have the tools, the words, the confidence, the knowledge, the life experience to say to him, go fuck yourself. Do a better job of leading your department. Talk to the grown men. Don't blame me. I am a child. I am a minor. I am a student in this school. Don't blame me. It's not me. I am existing as a girl in this world. That's my crime. Talk to them. That's what I should have said to him. But I didn't, what I did say to him is, you should talk to the married guy. You should have a conversation with him, because that has nothing to do with me. That is all him. That does not have anything to do with me. And, at that point, I was excused. There was no, oh, I'm sorry. There was no, he was haughty and smug and obnoxious, and he really made me feel like I should be ashamed. And I walked out of there feeling enraged and also confused, deeply confused about what had happened. So that when I was 14, this is the last story I'm going to tell you to try to really help you understand if you don't. Okay. And again, there are so many other things I could be writing about, that I'm not right now talking about. When I was 14, my mom started managing this restaurant on the Upper West Side. And eventually she became a real estate broker, but for a while she was in the restaurant business, and she owned a restaurant. She managed a restaurant for a while. She was managing this restaurant on the Upper West Side during the day. And I started checking coats there. I would go in after school a few days a week, and I would check coats till they closed. It was a neighborhood restaurant. I think they closed at like 9 or 10 on weekdays and like 11 or something on the weekends. So I was 14. I had braces. Okay. I might have been 13 when I started and then turned 14. I don't know. Anyway, she was working there during the day. And what would happen is her shift would end at either 5. I think it ended at like 5. And the night manager would come in at 4:30, and then he would be there, for the rest of the shift. So there was like overlap there. Maybe he came in at 4. I don't know. There was like overlap for them for like half an hour. And she considered him a friend. And every woman at that restaurant had a crush on him. Every straight woman had a crush on him. He was good looking. He was really charismatic. He just was that guy. He'd walk in. It was just, like very charming guy. Very typical 80s restaurant dude. And he started hanging around the coat check. And I was totally thrilled and flattered. I had, like I said, braces. And he was telling me I was beautiful and like I was so flattered. And like, I mean, I would like turn red. I couldn't believe this 27-year-old good looking man, charismatic guy that everybody thought was just like, amazing, was spending a minute talking to me, the like little coat check girl with braces. I would come in with my homework and I would do homework there at the desk, when I wasn't talking, taking coats and all that stuff. And one night he kissed me. So I had gone downstairs. I don't remember what he like came up with some reason. He needed me to go down to his office for a second or whatever. And he kissed me. And I was like, I could not believe it. This 27-year-old man with a mustache, scratchy mustache, kissed me. And I was completely stunned. I was a very innocent, I know like growing up in New York City, whatever, like in some ways you see all this stuff, whatever, but I could not believe it. I could not believe it. And I was, I hadn't remotely thought. I had a crush on him because everybody had a crush on him because he was like a good looking, charismatic guy, but he was a grown man. I wasn't thinking like that. And then I was, then I was like, wow, like this grown man who's like so amazing thinks I'm beautiful and is like, just kissed me and like, thinks I'm special and thinks I'm smart and thinks I'm, funny and like, yeah. And he said to me, like, this is like, I can't be doing this. This is totally wrong. This is totally forbidden. Like I can get into so much trouble. Like I go to jail. Like I cannot be doing this. And, and of course I've been keeping secrets my whole life. He's keeping my mother's drinking under wraps and what she would get enraged and she would come after me. I would keep that under wraps. I would keep my dad's women under wraps. I was like, I'm not going to tell anybody. Like, it's okay. Don't worry. I shouldn't have done that, and like, and then I'm in this thing. I'm completely in this thing. I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was going to marry him. I thought like this is a star-crossed thing and we're going to end up getting married. And he had a girlfriend. He had a gorgeous girlfriend. Stunning. Like, beautiful. She's probably too old for him. She was in her like early 20s. Stunning, absolutely gorgeous girlfriend. And she, clearly had no idea what was going on. It went on for months. Every chance he got, he would like call me down into his office and he would make out with me. And then I'd like, go back upstairs. And then he started saying things to me. And I had never written about this or spoken about it until this week. But I want people to understand what happens with people like this. He started saying things to me, like, God, like I would really love to like take this further, but I can't be responsible for like taking your virginity. I can't do that. So, you would have to like go and have sex with someone else. And then, we could be together. But like, I can't be the one to take your virginity. I can't take that responsibility. And I would start crying, like instantly crying. Because first of all, I wasn't ready to have sex with anyone. Not him, not anyone. But he started making me feel like you're not satisfying me. You're not giving me enough here. And the thought of like telling a 14-year-old child, you should go have sex with someone else so that you can come back and we can then have like the level of filth a person has to be, the garbage human being that you have to be to prey on a 14-year-old and try to get inside her head like that. is so deep and disgusting. I barely have words for it. I have a 16-year-old daughter now. 14, I was still drawing unicorns in my notebooks. And what ended up happening is he got a job very suddenly managing a hotel in the Caribbean somewhere. And he left. And this had been going on for like 9 months or something. You know, it had been going on for the better part of a year. And I didn't tell a soul. So I'm now like in this secretive, for me at the time, overwhelming relationship that for him was probably this like thing that he was doing that was just like, you know, getting his rocks off or whatever, you know, his sick pedophile fantasy. And for me, I'm like a total kid. I put a picture in the essay, braces on my teeth. My mother thought this man was her friend. And if he hadn't left, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I would like to think that I would never have done that, you know, that would never have happened. And thankfully I'll never have to know. But the idea when people start saying things like these girls, you know, they could have left or why didn't they tell their parents? I didn't tell anyone. And I was really smart. I was a very smart, straight A, you know, like everything from the outside looked, I didn't tell a soul. These guys, they prey on young kids who are hurting and who are starved for someone to tell them they're special and lovable and amazing. They can sniff that out. They go for it. I am really lucky that he left. I'm really lucky. You know, I have zero tolerance for people who support men like this, and they're all the same man. I don't understand how people are not getting this. I don't. A man like the president, who is best friends with Jeffrey Epstein for 15 years, okay? It doesn't take 15 years and countless parties and lunches and dinners to know who your close guy friend is and what he's up to. He said it himself, you know? Jeffrey's he's a terrific guy. He loves beautiful women just like I do. He likes them younger than I do. He said it. He knew. He's in the man's house. There are pictures with young girls. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And that's who he is. And that's who people are supporting. And for people like me, it is such a betrayal. It is such a disgusting betrayal. It's like, come on, what are you doing? How can you support this? How can you, look at that and know that about this person and be like, I'm still with him. Yeah, he's great. He's disgusting. He just called a woman Piggy. He has no respect for women or girls. He is a terrible human being. And this is what it's like, okay? We are in a world where girls and women are constantly being told you are not as important. You're not as important as boys and men. You can go do the same job as a man in the same company and you can do it just as well and you'll be paid 83 cents on the dollar. you can be the victim of a heinous assault. Maybe this person is a repeat offender, this baseball player. But if you bring charges and someone else brings charges in another state, you're going to go to court and the judge is going to talk about this boy's promise and potential. His promise and potential, he's a sociopath. Something's gone really wrong for this kid. I have a son, okay? I understand. It's not like something has gone very deeply wrong for a kid who is hurting other children, hurting other women and girls. Something has gone, he says, there's no promise and potential. That's the people with promise and potential in the room are the women who have been hurt and the girls who have been hurt. But the judges are not worrying about them. They're worrying about these boys. Domestic violence, women don't report it a lot because the legal system works for the men. Go check out what happens in domestic violence cases where there are children involved and the mothers are begging, please, this man is going to hurt the kids. Please don't let him have unsupervised visits. I'm begging. And the judge says, no, he's got paternal rights. I mean, and then the kids do not make it. It is a constant thing. Go talk to any women in your life. You know, the boss at work who says inappropriate things or massages them and they're trying to figure out, do I stand up for myself and lose my job? Like, do I report this to HR because I need health insurance benefits for my family? What do I do right now? Do I smile? What do I do? It is a constant thing. It's dark out. Am I safe right now? Do I need to put my keys between my fingers? I'm in a desolate parking lot. I think there's someone behind me. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm at a bar with my girlfriends. I'm going to make sure someone's holding my drink. It is a constant thing. It's 5:00 in the morning. I'd like to go jogging, but I don't think I can do that. It is nonstop. It is a constant. It is in the water that we are all swimming in. And it is making everyone sick, but we're used to swimming in the water. You know, we've built up a tolerance to this, but that doesn't mean it's okay or it isn't poison. It's poison. And it isn't okay. These are not the people. You know, you've got these men in South Carolina trying to put women away for 30 years it's already the most restrictive abortion ban in the country, and they're trying to make it worse. It was struck down. That didn't happen, but like, this is who these people are. They just decided all of these professions that are women driven largely they're not going to be professional degrees anymore. These are not good people, and they don't like women. They don't like women. They don't respect women or girls. And I don't know how much more obvious it has to get for people. But when the president of the United States points his stubby finger at a reporter and says, quiet, Piggy, and no one does anything, that's where we are. He's the pig. I don't know what else to say, but I really, really hope people wake up, because it gets worse. It gets worse every day. You know, And I just don't know what it's going to take here. I really don't. But I'd like to make an appeal to, to the men out there. Oh, and to the dogs out there. If you are, I don't know, if you're struggling with this stuff, because like we're all like I said, we're in the water together. I've heard from a lot of men. If you do read the essay and you look at the comments, they're incredible. First of all, there's so many women who've like been through this stuff. It's most of us are in this club. Most of us are in this club. We've been through something like this. And then there are a lot of men who just, they feel terrible, And a lot of them are saying things like, I know that I like at times in my life, years ago, like I laughed in the locker room at like, jokes I shouldn't have laughed at, or I looked the other way, or I didn't hear the first no. Like I know that I know that I did. Listen, just join the conversation. Like join the conversation, It's like it's never too late to join the conversation. Because I don't know how else we're going to change the landscape. I'm worried about my daughter. I don't want we're fighting the same battles here. I would like things to be better for my daughter, for everyone's daughters, for all of us, and for our sons too. I don't think this is good for boys or men, this environment. I think there are a lot of men who saw that this week and were appalled. Quiet, Piggy? Are you kidding me? It's disgusting for a man to speak that way to anyone. For anyone to speak that way to anyone. That's not what we do. Our kids are watching this. They're seeing this. That's all I got for now. I am sending you a lot of love. If you if you're a girl or a woman who presents this to you, I am here if you could use some support. I know this is all really difficult to watch if you feel the way that I do. There's a really beautiful conversation happening in the comment section, and a lot of really good men joining that comment section too. And that does give me hope, it gives me a lot of hope that there are people who are just as heartbroken as I am, and also just as motivated to try to like change things. This is just not acceptable. It's not. And I really hope that we can start to shift the trajectory here. So I am sending you a lot of love, and I'll see you soon.